All right, so thanks again, everybody. I hope you had a nice chance to kind of chat during the break. A lot of interesting conversations, a lot of interesting people. Excited to announce our next session. Actually, if our panelists could join us right now, that'd be awesome. We have a couple different sections today. So one of the themes that we're here to talk about is, animal health touches a lot of different industries. The Topeka and greater region has a lot of different industries. One thing that Stephen and I have learned in the insurance side is that it's extremely broad. All these industries are extremely broad. They touch all other industries. When we look at insurance, we're looking at things like genome sequencing. We're looking at things like supply chain. We're looking at things like construction automation. We take a very broad perspective because these are where you can really move the needle pretty significantly within these organizations. This has also been the case in almost every sector that we looked at, supply chain and health and new materials and sciences. And as we're looking into animal health, we've realized that this is similar. We have supply chain involvements, we have new materials and science, we have agriculture, we have feeding, we have a lot of the technologies that are really disrupting the other industries that we're looking at. And in that conversation, we've learned that there's a variety of different players at the table, all of whom are contributing in many different ways. And the conversation is really about how do we allocate all of these resources, all these specialties? How do we bring this incredible region of concentrated value? And how do we look at this in a slightly different perspective from the technology lens? How do we learn from adjacent industries? How do we learn from some of the unexpected entrepreneurs out there who are, like we heard earlier, failing until something works? And so today, we're going to talk a little bit about the animal health corridor, the region. We're looking at it from a perspective from research, from business, from other ecosystems that have been successful in bringing these groups together. Again, we wanted this audience to really feel like, the people in this room can really move the needle in this industry. We have to decide how we want to do that and what we're going to do. I think there's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of momentum already. But I think there's a real opportunity and a great timing for us to really bring this into another generation. So with that, I would like to get started. I would love to have each of our panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit why the animal health in the Topeka region is important to them. Yes, sir, how would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Is this on? Yeah, okay. So my name is Jesper Nordengard. I'm the CEO of Hill's Pet Nutrition. As you can tell, I'm still working on my Kansas accent. I'm originally from Denmark, and I think this is as good as it gets. My kids like to have their friends in their car and make fun of my accent. They try and get me to say free, because I cannot say that the right way, and I keep trying, but I keep getting it wrong. But I came here from downtown Paris 7 years ago, and I'm very, very happy living here in the region, personally, because I'm raising a family. This is a great place to raise a family, but also professionally, that I had no idea how much growth opportunity there is in this region. So we run a pet food company here that's a global company. We serve 80 markets around the world. The US is obviously the biggest and most important market, but we also have a lot of important growth markets outside of the US. So we bring a lot of international talent here. And the thing is, when we invite them here, it can be a little bit hard to convince them, but once they're here, no one want to leave. So I really think that this region is special in many ways. I think it's special because you have a concentration of animal health here. And if you look at not only do we have a concentration of animal health, but animal health is a fast-growing segment around the world. Those who follow the market a little bit will see that a lot of those animal health companies go for very high multiples right now, and that's because there's growth today, and everybody understands there will also be growth in the years to come. A lot of those companies are originating from our region, the region we call the animal health corridor. And actually, the reason why I'm so excited about the corridor is that it's not that there's no innovation here. We all do innovation in our different spaces. But if we can connect the dots, if we can figure out how to work together, if we can think business model instead of just product innovation, we will create a lot of growth and wealth for this region, and we'll create better lives for pets and for around the world, for production animals as well. So I really think events like this, where we get together, we compare notes, and we think about how 2 + 2 can equal 5, is pretty exciting. And we have all the right players in the region. We just need to do a little bit more in plugging it all in. We're a proud member of the Animal Health Corridor, and we are very active in trying to advance also the awareness of the corridor on each of the coasts, where obviously a lot of the investor money is located. So thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be part of this panel.
That's awesome. We hear a lot of people who are excited to change the world for people, but we don't always hear about changing the world for our pets. But we do know that they change the world for us.
Exactly.
So it's an exciting initiative.
Makes us better people.
It's true. Dr. Richardson.
I'm Dan Richardson. I'm going incognito today. I shaved the beard off. After 37 years, some people I'm reintroducing myself to here. My background, I'm a veterinarian, so I obviously have a great love for animals. At least I would hope most veterinarians have a great love for animals, and have devoted my career to that. I was in academia for quite some time, and then I joined Mark Morris, who was the predecessor of, we moved into the Hills organization. He and his father started Hills Pet Nutrition. So I spent quite a few years at Hills and retired from there. While I was at Hills, I often introduced myself as a recovering academic, because I had been in academia, then gone to industry, which is considered kind of the dark side sometimes, which I found was not the case. But then I went back to academia and helped establish the K-State Olathe campus, which was a great opportunity. All of that, when I look at it, I had such a wonderful chance to be involved with so many what you might call startups. I mean, we started up the Animal Health Corridor, identified it. It started up because of people sitting in this room, but we identified it. That was what was critical with the Brackey report. We've gotten a Kansas State University campus in Johnson County working with Kansas University. And those of you that are familiar with basketball or football or anything else sports-wise know that KU and K-State usually compete very vehemently, but we get along great and we work well together. So it's an exciting time that we're starting to see a coalition of things. We started up BioKansas, which brought industry together. So there's been a lot of things happening, and I just want to echo what Jesper's saying, is that unification, that identification, connecting the dots and sharing with each other is so exciting. And I guess I'll end it with, I was born and raised in Kansas, so it's kind of exciting for me to come back to Kansas, live here, and then be in Topeka when we're having this conversation. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Overbay?
Tom Overbay. I'm a partner with Expedite Animal Health. We formed Expedite 10 years ago. For background, I was in veterinary practice for a period of time, and then this will mark the 32nd year on the dark side, as Dr. Richardson accurately describes. And like Dan, I was involved in the very beginnings of what became the Animal Health Corridor back when Kansas City Life Sciences had their original HOT teams. They formed about 20 years ago, and Dan made a call to Fort Dodge, and where I was working at the time, and I was volunteered to go over and spend my time over there because nothing is going to come of that. And the reason that that's an important comment is I think the industry today is a different industry, and the time is right when you look at why we formed Expedite. And the idea being that nascent technology needs a roadmap, and it needs people who understand it. And I think that's a nice thing about the Animal Health Corridor. When you look at the audience today, you've got a cross-section of not only age and experience, but disciplines. You've got banking, you've got finance, you've got intellectual property, you've got clinical research, you've got the ultimate consumers, of the products in terms of the animal health companies that live here. And had we tried to do this, I think 10 years ago, our message would have fallen on deaf ears. But the animal health industry today is looking for a new model, and that is we want to acquire our assets. And I think the neat thing about this group and in this area is when you talk to people outside of the animal health industry, as I like to say, the people here know the difference between a hen and a heifer. So we can have a conversation with people and they get it, right? And so you're not trying to explain, to your point, these are the animals and we're trying to help the animals. people understand that. And I think it really makes our job easier when we start bringing together the right teams and right partnerships, that we all speak the same language, even though, you know, we've talked about accents today. This is actually American English, but from a very hilly part of Virginia. So I think that's, to me, I've been a transplant from Virginia now for 20 years. And basically my family is Kansan now, and have really enjoyed being here because of not only the professional opportunities, but there's competitors in this room, but there's also a collegiality that exists here in Kansas City that's really hard to replicate. And the folks who were trying to bring in a lot of human health and whatnot, and technologies into animal health, the thing that they're always amazed by is how well the competitors play together. And I think that's something that this area can really bring, and I'm excited to be part of this group and to see what we can continue to grow here in the Kansas area.
Really appreciate that, and the competitiveness of and the simultaneously the willing to play together is predominantly one of the main reasons why we're here. And so it's a unique to this region, I can tell you that much. Lee Brock, actually running a lot of these experiments and looking at things at scale. Please introduce yourself.
My name's Lee Bork, and I'm the chairman of Innovative Livestock Services. I'm a little different than the rest of the folks up here. Is the mic on? I'm a little different than the rest of the folks that are up here. They're telling about how much they love the animals. I'm in the business because I love to eat them, and there aren't a lot of crowds that you can say that in, but I hope this is one of them. I have commercial feed yards in Kansas and Nebraska, large farming operation, but in addition to that, our company does a lot of venture investing. I served on the Bioscience Authority with Dwayne Cantrell and Kevin Lockett and Tony Simpson, and we were heading in a direction that I think had a lot of the same goals that this group does. Unfortunately, being a government entity, it was ended right at the point where it was ready to take off. But we also participate in the Fulcrum group with Dwayne and Kevin in trying to do a lot of the same things. I'm a native Kansan, K-Stater. I live in Manhattan. We work very close with K-State in the research and the development of new methods and technologies to make the livestock industry more economical and safer for our consumers, and being able to share that with the consumers to where they have confidence in the product that they're buying from us. I've always had the idea that it really isn't who has the knowledge, it's who has the knowledge first. And that's what a group like this can do with the resources that come in. And being a part of that group, it enables us to do a much better job of caring for the animals, and I won't say of loving them, because we don't get that individually attached to them, but that's how we make our living. We're conservationists from the beginning, and we're animal welfare advocates from the very beginning. If we don't treat them right and do the right things and handle their health in a proper way that's also safe for the consumers of our product, then we're not doing our job. So I'm very glad to be on the panel this morning.
Thank you, Lee. Next we have Kim Young. She knows it's not, those in the audience, my mom's name is also Kim Young, so it creates a lot of inbox confusion for me. You know, it's like, hey, you need to pay your speeding ticket, and it's like, that doesn't sound like Casey Animal Health. But yes, I mean, so much of this is really what your organization has put together. When we first met the Topeka team, we were evaluating, you know, what should we be doing together in this region, and it wasn't until they brought the animal health corridor to our table did we say, wait a second, this is something really special. And so thank you for everything you've done so far and for being here today. But Obviously, I can do it no justice, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Kimberly Young, and I'm president of the Casey Animal Health Corridor. This is the 15th year anniversary of the corridor. Much of the history has really already been covered by the previous 4 panelists. But I think I want to emphasize, anytime you have a cluster or an ecosystem development, it's always rooted in 2 things. There's always competition. So we know that the companies at the table are competing, but there's also cooperation. And I think that Kansas City is uniquely positioned to be able to have a cluster like this and create an ecosystem and have a cluster impact to the economy because of the willingness of the cooperation. The competition will always be there. That's really the root of what you have when you have an industry cluster or ecosystem. I've been with the corridor for almost 10 years. When I started, Bayer Animal Health, which is currently potentially being acquired, I always like to give them credit. The first 5 years of the corridor, Bayer funded 100% of it. And so they really allowed this idea to mature. They allowed it to grow roots. And when I started, the first task was, okay, we're going to be a big supporter, we're still going to be a big partner, but there needs to be diversification. And so that diversification came as you run any business from a lot of ways, financial, structural, input, operational, program, ideas. And so it's really been within the last 10 years that I would say that the Animal Health Corridor has really springboarded and has grown into what it is today. And today the Animal Health Corridor represents 300 companies. We cover 22 counties in both Kansas and Missouri. There are many communities that are involved in that. We are a bi-state region. We do work with both of our partners at the state of Kansas as well as the state of Missouri. And we work with all of the companies. And those companies, of the 300, about 100 are primary and 200 are the support industry. And those support industry are critical to the success. They're critical to the ecosystem, and they are part of really what makes the corridor unique. Previous to working at the corridor, I worked for the state of Kansas. I worked there during the Sebelius administration. I worked for the state of Missouri. I worked there during Governor Nixon's administration, and I've also worked in Wichita. So I have experience with another cluster, aerospace. In Kansas, we talk about the 3 A's, and I've had the privilege of leading and being involved in all 3: agriculture, animal health, and aerospace.
That's the first time I've heard that. I like that. Agriculture, aerospace, animal health. That's what to remember. Cross-industry is really key here, and I know that we've done a lot of work in those industries, and a lot of the stuff we see in aerospace is what eventually comes into our construction program, comes into our IoT program. So having that cross-industry exposure is really, really important. So we've kind of heard a lot about why this region. We know, I think everybody in this room knows that we're all passionate about what we're doing here. But there's an element of what are the benefits of an innovation platform. I know that Said and I have a lot of ideas on this. We talk about it frequently, but I would love to hear from you guys. There's a lot of different benefits. There's the investor's perspective, there's the corporate's perspective, there's the research perspective, the ecosystem perspective. And so kind of turning over to you guys, what do you see as being some of the primary benefits of establishing an innovation program in Topeka? And do you have any other examples of stuff that maybe you've done in the past that kind of validate this model? Because by no means are we the first ones to do this here. Jesper?
Yeah, I think ultimately innovation is required to make the world a better place. Innovation is required to bring growth and prosperity to our region. And in today's world, growth will come from uncomfortable places. And that means it will come from doing things differently from how we've done it in the past. So we built our great company based on being really good at doing nutrition. We're going to continue to do that. But if we don't plug in technologies in making our nutrition easier, accessible, being able to measure and show results, so as a pet parent you can see that our food is actually making a difference, so it's worth paying more for, we will ultimately lose, and the barriers of entry will be too low, and we will not be able to afford the innovation that will bring the next generations of great Hills food. One of the things we invested in is a home delivery model for veterinarians. So the big revolution in our space is e-com. And you'll have heard about Chewy, you've heard about Amazon, Walmart.com. That is disrupting the vet industry. We cannot afford or allow that the vets give up on engaging in food. That's how we build our business. So we invested time and resources in building a model that allows the veterinarians to sign up their clients in the clinic for a home delivery model. The really cool thing about this technology, it was actually difficult to design because of all the tax engine you have to put into it, right? But what's really cool about it is that when they sign you up on a home delivery, the compliance on the recommendation from a vet goes from 1.5 bags to the excess of 8 bags. So not only is the veterinarian making more money, we're making more money, we can reinvest in better innovation, but we're practicing better medicine, right? Because there's a reason why the veterinarian is recommending a certain treatment. This is, I think, where everything comes together, that we're creating value, and we're also creating a better experience for people out there. That is also going to bring prosperity, jobs, and new energy to our region. In our old model, we would not have come up with this. We came up with it because we started connecting dots. We connected, our innovation teams with the commercial teams, and we also had to seek external counsel to try and figure out how we do something like this. We had no idea about running what's in essence a retailer P&L when we started this journey. So I think it's an example of how we bring the new world together with our core competency, and we also bring in resources that we don't possess ourselves and that we have to go out and resource from other companies.
Food as nutrition is one of the fastest growing trends in our human side as well. So a perfect environment to validate that is a place like Hills. Dr. Richardson.
If I think about just the Topeka area, I lived here. I was involved with things in Kansas City, and we joke about Kansas being a flyover state. Well, Topeka was actually a drive-by city, it seemed like, as far as the animal health corridor was concerned. Topeka sits in a unique situation of being between two major universities, K-State with veterinary medicine, KU with medicine at KU Med, and the pharma school and all engineering and all the others. We have a local university here, Washburn, with great legal and business skill sets and training. But we didn't really have strong players. Hills was involved with the corridor, but we had a lot of what I would call underexposed companies. We're sitting in one of them, Security Benefit, that weren't aware of the opportunities that came with being involved with the animal health corridor. I've always said, tell me one specialty, one business, one educational program that doesn't fit into animal health. I haven't found one. There's a place for everybody. So I think Topeka became ripe. You heard it earlier from the mayor. The Chamber of Commerce led this charge to get people together and identify the opportunity for animal health, to take advantage of, not to replace, not to be better than, but to add, as Plug and Play has said in their language, a layer. I think Topeka adds a layer of opportunity. We have the legislature here. We have some great industries here with Hills and Evergy and Security Benefit and several others. And so the opportunity is here to engage more people, but also to allow us to unify and focus and be a hub. And in this virtual world today, while we're talking about Topeka, it's going to impact, as Katrine said earlier, the entire region. And I think Matt actually said it the most. He went completely on out, clear up to Nebraska, which Lee was glad to hear, I'm sure. So I think that, to me, is why it's just an exciting time, not unlike when we got excited about the animal health corridor. We got excited about several entities here, BioKansas and others. This is another of those touch points that I think we have. right now.
Couldn't agree more. I don't even see him in the room now, but Bob earlier was describing being in Topeka as like this whole city is a startup company right now, and it's reinventing and reestablishing and looking at new opportunities, and it does feel like that. And that's how we run our business back at home, and it's exciting to feel like that here. So Tom, I'd love to hear kind of some of your perspectives on where you see this really kind of resonating with your model and others.
Sure. From our perspective, when it comes to innovation and the specific area, you could really think about the 3 Ds of what we do. Number one is discernment. Which assets do we bring in? Which ones are merit development? And then there's development itself, and then there's divestiture. So this is a unique area in terms of, you've got to have a big funnel, right? So when people hear Topeka's in the animal health corridor, our business is global. And whenever you talk about being from the animal health corridor, whether you're in Brazil or Germany or Asia or wherever, people go, oh yeah, I know, you guys are the animal health experts. And there's a lot of value there. Sometimes we don't appreciate, I think, as much as we should. But once you bring all those things in, there's a sufficient talent pool here to be able to do the really difficult part, and that's which one should we buy into? How do we discern the opportunities that merit development? And it's really nice to be able to not just get on the phone or on the computer, is drive down and I can ask Lee, will this fit in your ranching organization? Will this fit in your feed yards? I can talk to Hills about, here's a thing we're looking at for maybe a food ingredient. Or you can talk to you mentioned Bayer or an animal health company. How's this going to fit where you're going? So you can talk about the technology, you can talk about the potential demand, and then you can start bringing the skill sets together to develop that. And by the end of the day, when you're talking about divestiture, because the industry in the area has a reputation for truly being discerning, so you're not bringing junk, you're bringing things of value. The development program is right, so when a company buys an asset that's grown up here, they know it's been properly, the regulatory piece is in place. The manufacturing is right. So it almost becomes a revenue-ready opportunity for the industry. And that's a real value, I think, is the animal health industry is no longer looking to necessarily grow its technologies internally, but to acquire them and put them immediately to the bottom line. The time is right, and I think the thing that Topeka can take advantage of is using its location and using the resources, individuals, and disciplines to bring that all together at this time. So I think you talked about the 3 A's, the 3 D's, if you will, of discernment, development, and divestiture really can exist in an organization like this, and do so not just on a regional basis, but I would challenge you to think globally, because it's animal health is no longer about just feed yards in Kansas. It's no longer just about feeding the pets in our household, but you think about I guess probably the best example I had on this is a few years ago. We were in a meeting and Dwayne Cantrell was there, and we were talking about animal health in China, and we mentioned the fact that, well, it's a livestock market because you guys don't do pets, and they go, you don't understand. Our very teeny middle class, very tiny, is 350 million people, and it's like, duh, that's the United States, right? So it's all about perspective, and so sometimes I think we need to have some of our assumptions challenged, and it's a great opportunity to be able to do those sort of things, and it happens here because of the global nature of the population and the perspectives.
It's a great perspective. Nobody can be an expert in everything, but we can put a room full of experts to start getting closer. And the more diverse those experts are, oftentimes the more opportunity kind of comes out of that. It's an interesting perspective I kind of think is something worth kind of latching onto here is we see a lot of cybersecurity startup companies in our ecosystem, and if it comes from Israel, there's kind of a badge of approval because you've made it through the very tough Israeli startup market. You could see a similar opportunity in the animal health. If you make it through the animal health corridor, you've come through. It's the badge of approval with the people who really understand the different elements of that model. It's a great opportunity for that. So Lee, a little bit further, I understand you are actually running quite a few experiments across your organization. So what is the value of something like this to you?
Well, as I look at the animal health corridor, I think as an investor, the parts are all here. We're fortunate that we've got so many of the pharma companies that are represented. We have the veterinarians, the production folks that are there. We have companies like Hill Pet Foods. It takes it all the way through. I believe that it really doesn't make any difference where it's at. Topeka has got an opportunity to become a major player in this. We are the Silicon Valley of animal health. And it hasn't been presented, and Kimberly, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm saying that I think there are more opportunities for us to present ourselves as the real professionals, the real folks that know what's going on, to center that here in Topeka, to bring organization and bring these parts closer together to where we are working. As we look, and Jesper, is one of the things that my part of the industry, you have a lot of veterinarians that are working on the companion animal side. We're having a terribly hard time getting an adequate amount of veterinarians that will serve the food animal industry. It's getting to be a real deficit in the rural areas to be able to have that. How are ways that new ways that we can use technologies and techniques to be able to serve those people without having to have that veterinarian that lives within 20 miles of you? There is so much opportunity here. There's even a lot of capital right now that's in the animal health corridor, but we need a lot more. That's what the Bioscience Authority was trying to do, were to bring in the bio firms that would work with the animal health side, the human health side. This opportunity, in my mind, gives us, all of us that are in here, the opportunity to do the reason that we're here today, and that's to figure out how to make some money out of this. We're not here as a benevolent organization. We're here to figure out how can we invest money, be good for Topeka, be good for the animal health system in general, and be good for the animal health corridor. And putting those pieces together, I think the pieces are here. I think it's just getting them in the right place in the puzzle to where we can really push ourselves forward.
Thank you. Kim, again, so much of this is as a result of what your team has accomplished and kind of woken us up to this kind of combined region and players and everything like that. 300 partners is very impressive. What's the value to you? How can we help you add a couple of startup companies to that list?
Yeah, I think, for us, there are, and I didn't explain this at the beginning, but there are really 4 areas of focus for the corridor. Workforce development, so making sure that there's a pipeline of talent for the next generation. Public policy, primarily at the federal level. Engagement of the industry and working with new companies that are looking to relocate, and then advancing innovation. So we'll focus on that vertical for today. But I think that, what the Animal Health Corridor has is tremendous universities. We have really some very excellent research assets within the broader region. Some of those assets are known globally. I mean, when you look at the Stowers Institute, when you look at Children's Mercy and some of the research that they do, when you look at Stormont Vale right here in Topeka, I mean, they're an amazing asset for research. So, and those are just a few. And then you look at the universities. All of those help spur innovation and new ideas. And what adds to that are accelerators. And those programs are so critical. Sprint has an accelerator that is focused primarily in the dairy space. Techstars has an accelerator in the region that is focused on technologies broadly. So having a brand like Plug and Play and an additional accelerator to the region adds to that ecosystem. It's a tremendous asset. I think that in our experience, companies that come out of an incubator that's tied closely to a research university or come through an accelerator program are much better prepared for making that pitch for an investment. They're much better prepared for pitching to a company for an industry partnership or a licensing agreement, a development agreement. So, from our perspective, having Plug and Play here adds to the ecosystem. It furthers our strength and innovation, and it deepens the pool of early stage companies that we can all work with. We have the support structure here. We know that if we can get animal health companies here, that we can help them grow. We know we have the resources, we have the talent, we have the expertise. So an additional pipeline of identifying, what are those best and brightest technologies out there? Where are they at? Bring them here, because we know if we can get them here, that we can cultivate that. And most of the time, many times, I shouldn't say most, many times those companies decide that staying in Kansas City, staying in Topeka, staying in any one of our communities is the best place for them to grow their business. So we're really excited to have your team here and to work with you.
Thank you for the kind words. Lee?
If I could, and I don't know how you could forget this, but the opportunity of the National Bioagri-Defense Facility coming to Manhattan and the opportunities that are going to be there in this animal health corridor, it's such a big thing that it's going to extend a lot further than what anyone might imagine. When they started, and Dr. Ron Truan is here this morning, but from K-State, but the way it was described to me is that NBAF is going to be to animal health what the CDC in Atlanta is to human health, and that Eastern Kansas has no idea of the impact that's going to come from that. Well, in order to be able to take advantage of a situation like that, you have to be prepared to have the resources available to complement and to make it even more important. So I didn't want to leave that one off the table, Hud.
I was trying to figure that out in the next question, so that's perfect, actually. And there's a muscle memory involved, too. It's if we sit around waiting for that perfect pilot and we haven't done a pilot before, then the likelihood of that pilot going poorly is extremely high. There's, to your point, with those opportunities, we have to be prepared for them, and we have to know how to act when that timing comes. So we have about 7 minutes left, and I'll ask kind of one combined question. What can the corporations or other players, or what can each of you do to give startup companies a little bit more reason, or kind of entice them to be here? What can we do to better leverage the resources like NBAF, like the universities, to say, hey, this is what's available to you. This is why you guys should be here. And once you start seeing it, you should be here on a more ongoing basis. So, over-explained as usual. It's one of my habits. What are you guys most excited about, and what can we do to really leverage our resources to bring startup companies to the region? And Kim, I know you're well prepared for this if you're ready.
I think the biggest opportunity that we have in this region is capital. And so I think that, we have started an outreach program. Last year was our first program. We're going to do it again this year, where we went to New York and we took an educational program. There's interest from the coast in investing in this space, but interest is high, knowledge is low. So how do we fill that gap? How do we close the gap so that the knowledge of the space, understanding how to evaluate an ROI, understanding what the drivers of the future are, where where can that technology be overlaid? What needs need to be met? We need to help close that gap. So we are trying to do our part, but I think just more opportunities for capital. And if that is capital in the region, that's always better. And we have a lot of great programs. Fulcrum's been mentioned. Tech Excel has not been mentioned yet today, but that's another really great program. KC Rising, so there are investors here and there are opportunities here, but we need more. And so I think that being able to tap into your network of investors is going to be very critical for us in helping those companies advance.
Well, I'll keep this one short, but I used to have an old partner from Tennessee that was a mentor of mine, and when I asked him one day how, he was one of the greatest businessmen I was ever around, and I said, James, how do you become successful? Remember, he was from Tennessee, and he said, well, partner, he said, the way I figured it out is that you just figure out where success is at, where progress is going, and you jump right in front of it. And I think that's what we're talking about here in Topeka. We've got the opportunity to jump right in front of it. But we've got to remember that every company that comes here, every business that wants to invest here, there's one thing that they have in mind. And so often we talk about all these ideals that we have, but they all have to make money if they're going to stay here. And that a lot of times is something that people are afraid to talk about, but I think it needs to be a very important part of what we look at. How can the people that we attract make money out of it?
Tom?
So I think the capital part's been an important thing to be addressed. Obviously, you have to have that fuel in the engine to go forward. One of the things we've a bit glossed over, perhaps, is I think the know-how that animal health is not human health. Animal health is not consumer health, and a lot of the new technologies. If you look at all the products that came to animal health in the pharmaceutical space, they always start off as a human health product. I mean, very few people say, I'm going to invent an animal health product. It's how can I apply an animal health, human health technology? Those that don't often come from crop chemical. So you've got Bayer sitting down in Kansas City. But how does that get into being a product? And I think the thing that this area brings is that know-how. They can look at a product and say, you either have something or you don't. Does the science make sense? Is there an application for that science? Can I bring a product then to a feed yard or to an animal health company that the consumer is willing to pay for that and have enough margin back through the chain? It's great to have a new technology. Maybe some of you in the room have a dog with arthritis as an example, and you think, boy, I'd love a great new product that's 100% safe and 100% effective, and I would use it if I had it. I would challenge you, if it's $100 a day and has to be given IV, you don't want anything to do with it. So we're done. The conversation is now over. So there's people in this area who know when to say no. The other part of it, and I think plug and play, especially given the presentation early this morning, is there's an avalanche, a flood of data, and how do we manage that data going forward? And how can we stop it from just being information and have it help us make decisions? So I think you start integrating the different technologies that are in the area. You look at manufacturing, data management, et cetera, but the overall know-how of how to bring those products to the market and navigate the system. There are very few places in the world that do that better than this area.
That's an important fact. Coming from the insurance industry, in the beginning of the program, we would show entrepreneurs all the time who didn't speak insurance as well as the partners at the table did. And that was a big problem for the partners in the beginning. They said, oh, they don't know insurance as well as we do. But in reality, that's what you're bringing to the table, right, is that insurance knowledge. If we're looking at a data situation, you kind of wish that there was a deep data scientist on the other side of that you could explain the animal health correspondings and which variables that matter and how to build accordingly. It's combining those two worlds that are going to be the most opportunity here, but you guys have to be excited about bringing the animal health expertise to the table. It's not always going to be painted out for you. There will be a lot of co-development opportunities here. But the startup companies we've already been talking to about Kansas, some of them don't speak animal health as well as you guys do, and I can assure you that. But I can promise you they speak a lot of other languages very, very well, particularly software. So that's where we're going to find the most intersection and value, in my opinion. Dr. Richardson.
Well, I just simply add on because I don't think we can take any one thing and say that's all we need to do, and I think that's the beauty of this discussion is that we're highlighting a lot of important areas. If I took my oversimplified brain and tried to oversimplify how I look at it, this is getting an opportunity where we are able to identify, take startups, entrepreneurs, and help guide them to work on the right widget, for the needs that companies have, so that they have something useful, something that will make them successful. They will produce it, it will be used. On the other hand, we have industries here and around the world that have problems to be solved, and we can help identify those people working in those areas to help solve those problems. So we really have a two-way street that's very, very much mixed together. You can't separate them, but it keeps people focused, and it uses basically limited resources. We have a lot of resources, but they are limited. We need to put them on things that are of value, and I think you'll hear more about how Plug and Play does that later on, but I think that's an important part, to help out industry and help out the entrepreneurs.
Mine is on? Yeah?
Yeah, just one final word from Jesper.
Okay. No, I think it's all been said, right? I really think if you think of a startup, what do you need? You need resources, you need capital, you need space, you need people to open the doors for you, right? And sometimes we mistakenly forget that actually being a startup, a lot of them fail. And you see the tip of the iceberg are those that actually succeed. So I think us engaging is really key. And if there's one big pitch I have for all of us is, let's make sure we truly think as a region. I think it's so critical that we think of as an animal health corridor. It doesn't matter to me if a startup I'm engaging with is in Manhattan, in Topeka, or in Kansas City. I just need the energy here, and I need to do a better job in opening the doors of my company and give access to all the great people we have. There's so many things we can also learn from you all, right? I think it's the one thing all the companies represented here will have in common. Probably data and analytics is a big thing for all of us, right? That would be an area we can all partner on and try and help and get some bright minds to the region that can help us figure out how can the animal health corridor also connect the dots better through data and analytics, create better product, better services. So I really think a lot of it is also about us engaging wholeheartedly, and not only the people here, but the broader organization that we represent.
Well, I'm switching my dog to Hill's Pet Food, I can tell you that much. But I just want to get a quick hand of applause for everybody that's on the audience today. And just a quick thank you to all of you guys. This is something that really is the people in the room, and thank you guys. It really means a lot to us to participate, to be so welcomed here, and to hear so many passionate people passionate about the same things that we are. Animal health is something that we are growing more passionate about as we're learning. But I know that a lot of what you guys are saying is very close to our heart, and so thank you guys again.